Hey everybody, it's Tony with Timpl. This is a very challenging subject because you're probably with a bad boss, and that's why you're looking at this. First of all, let's identify the type of bad boss that you're working with. We're going to go through 3 kind of bad boss stereotypes, and you're going to learn how to spot them. And more importantly, can we fix it? This is very important. Before you act on any of the ideas that I'm about to share with you, number 1, you've got to customize your approach to your unique situation. And number 2, trust your own instincts. If you're debating what I've said and it doesn't feel right with you, stick with your own gut. Okay. All right, let's get started. The first bad manager stereotype is the micromanager. The micromanager is someone who is too involved in every detail of your work. And the negative impact of you not fixing this problem for you and for the team is that it really does erode your self-confidence and the confidence of the team. Because number 1, it's annoying as hell, but it's going to kill creativity. And it shows a supreme lack of trust of people who are on the team. And when someone's constantly jumping in and doing everything, it just leaves very little room for your own career progression. You're unable to take on new tasks and learn because the manager, the boss, is just going to jump in and take it away from you. So here's a clue that you might be working with a micromanager. The first one is that they expect, or they are constantly checking in, excessive check-ins, right? They're constantly checking in on your progress. They might say things like, hey, keep me posted every hour on this. Or they might post on Slack routinely, can I get a status check? And that's a good indicator that they just can't let go. They're not trusting you to finish within the deadline that's been established. The other area that you might see is there's a lack of delegation. You can see that there's a lot of work piling up. You see that the boss's desk is really, really full, but they're not delegating. They're not taking some of these interesting assignments and pushing them out to the team, right? They're trying to do everything themselves. And you'll hear comments like, well, I'll handle that myself. Or when you come in to try to ask a question about something, they might just say, just give it to me, I'll finish it. Good indicator that you're dealing with a micromanager. And I think the third way that you're going to really be able to pinpoint that you've got a micromanager is that they interfere in the routine flow of work. I mean, routine flow of work is, frankly, it's what it sounds like. It's the work that's not that challenging. You know how to do it. And they're constantly interrupting the flow. You know, they should totally just let you manage this and handle it. Why are you bothering yourself? Why are you taking your precious time and checking on something as needless? You know, hey, before you send that out, I need to review it. Or what's your inbox workflow? Are you setting filters up? Just questions that are so granular and so kind of mundane, you know you're dealing with a micromanager. So why are these traits present with a micromanager? You know, what are the character flaws or issues that this person is dealing with? And if you can kind of understand maybe what's happening in this person's head, it might help you start managing up a little better, might give you some better ideas of how to make the situation better. Clearly, they have a lack of trust. They could be dealing with the fear of failure, which is they're very insecure, and they think if they do it themselves, there's less chance for failure. Believe it or not, a perfectionist is a micromanager, and a perfectionist wants to check every little thing. And let's face it, you just can't do that. I mean, you have to know what things to let go, and good enough is good enough in some instances. Clearly, they have control issues. This one's kind of interesting. They might not be able to handle criticism. So if they're submitting this work to upper levels of management, maybe they're afraid, maybe they don't want any kind of criticism back on them. So those could be some of the issues that they're dealing with. So what I would suggest to start improving this work relationship with this micromanager is it's really, you're going to have to start managing up, right? And it's going to start with communicating. And specifically, I need you to start setting expectations, right? When the micromanaging begins, you might say something like, have our goals changed? Have any of our expectations changed? Because we're on track to complete this assignment, right? The team has everything under control. Would you like me to notify you as soon as we're done? Something like that might be able to just push that micromanager away and get them to start thinking, yeah, that's true. Nothing's changed. We've already had the expectation meeting up front. So hopefully that will push them away and kind of keep them away. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to build on, and this is going to take time, and it's just not something you can do right away, but you've got to start building trust. And you do build trust by hitting deadlines. And if they're not necessarily giving you deadlines, then you want to give them a deadline of when they can expect the work to be done. So you can kind of create that framework to be operating in so they can begin building trust in you that, hey, you said it was going to be done on this time and you did it. And that way you can kind of prove to them that you and the team have this totally under control. The next time they come to you, you can remind them, right, that we have hit every deadline that's ever been asked of us. So, we got this, i.e., go leave us alone. Go focus on your work. Now, my final piece of advice with dealing with a micromanager, because you don't exactly know what's going on in their head, they're clearly having some kind of a control or trust issue. You do want to try to speak to them kind of heart to heart. And that's really how you can communicate with this kind of person, is that heart to heart. It doesn't mean that they don't have empathy. They probably do. And so if you can approach them with a little empathy and a little patience, I think you can reach them. It may not be immediate. You're going to have to be patient, but I do think you can get them over the hurdle of always wanting to know and get involved with everything that you're doing. Now, this next bad boss stereotype is the non-communicator. This one is really frustrating because they're really avoiding you. They're avoiding giving you clear instructions. They're very vague. And that's really challenging for a team because the negative impact of this approach of the non-communicator may not be as a problem for a team that is very well organized. It's routine work. Everyone knows what they need to do. The manager doesn't really need to communicate that much. But I'm talking about the situation where there's a lot going on. There's a lot of challenges in the group. There's a lot of new tasks, new things that have to be accomplished. And the non-communicator is not setting down the right expectations and not giving enough information. And the team, or you specifically, you need more structure. You're trying to understand what's the goal, right? What's the timeline? What's our deadline for accomplishing this? And if you don't have that, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time and energy, because if they're not telling you enough information and you set off and do work, and then you later find out it was a waste of time, that is really demoralizing. And it's also going to kind of zap your innovation, your ability to want to be creative and problem solve, because you don't really know where you're headed. And so that's the problem with this non-communicator, is they're not really setting the expectations. And so you don't have the freedom and the flexibility to use all your creative juices to fix whatever problem there is. And when that happens, right, when that kind of situation is present, you don't even really know if you're hitting your performance goals. And that leads to maybe a lack of bonus. That's actually a pretty big problem. And because you don't know necessarily where you're going and you're having to redo the work, that could lead to overtime. And in some cases, that is, you're not being paid for overtime. All right, let's look at a couple of clues that you might be working with a non-communicator. You might hear a phrase like, look, just get it done. Figure it out yourself. Or you know what to do. All right. That's someone who either they themselves don't know enough about what needs to be done, or they really just are totally avoiding any kind of accountability, and they're just pushing it all onto you. So here are some suggestions to help you create a little more structure and some better communication with this non-communicator. If you're given an assignment with no instructions, I think you've got to immediately just kind of, your common sense has to kick in And you've got to just immediately ask follow-up questions to get those basic expectations put in place. And show your boss that you like to use the SMART goal format. If you don't know what the SMART goal format is, we'll put a link to that somewhere in the description, but that's a great format. They should know what SMART goals are. If not, it'll be an opportunity for you to teach them what SMART goals are. That might be something that they want to start adopting. Frankly, that might give them some more confidence to manage the team if they know there are SMART goals that are being used. So look for that link down there. We'll link to some other websites, some other information about SMART goals. If you need help starting a complicated task, ask your boss if you can check in to make sure you're on the right track, to make sure that you're handling this situation properly. And this really is that act, learn, adjust mentality. You know you have to take some action, but don't wait too long before finding out you're on the wrong track. If they're not giving a lot of information and you can tell they're real busy and they're just kind of pushing it off, then just say, hey, can I follow up with you in X amount of time or tomorrow? Let's make sure we're on the right track. That will establish that secondary meeting. And now you can talk through this complicated task that you're trying to finish. And this way, it'll help you show your logic to the boss too, of how you're thinking, how you were approaching it. You might be able to get some feedback by using that approach. So what are those character traits that are holding your boss back from being a better communicator? Well, I mentioned it earlier. They may just be trying to avoid responsibility. They just don't like conflict. They know if they start dealing with the team, there's going to be differing opinions, and they just don't know how to deal with conflict. Now, the problem with not dealing with conflict is that things go unresolved, and that eventually leads to people that quit. They could be very indecisive. They might just assume too much. They may just assume that you know how to do things when really you don't have that skill set. So it's really important that you jump in and set those expectations or get that feedback right away so they can understand, oh, maybe I've assumed too much. They could just be extremely passive. And it is hard to deal with people who are passive. It's hard to fix that problem. But there are some things you can do to improve this working environment with someone who's a non-communicator. And the first best piece of advice I can give you is to schedule regular meetings for updates. It's a chance to get some feedback and get more information on everything that's happening around the project. You just need to find a time that works for both of you. Another thing to do, touched on it earlier, is you need to clarify expectations, right? Write down all the details and then email them your understanding, right? Document agreements. So if you're not getting enough information, email them back what information you do have. Therefore, if something does go wrong, you've covered your own ass, all right? The old CYA. Now, this is going to take a little more courage. I admit all of these problems require courage to fix them, but you really want to address these communication gaps by saying, what preferred communication style do you want? What works for you? Like, how would you like to communicate with us and the team or me? And you can then say, this is the kind of information I like when I'm working on a project. This is kind of what I need to know so I can work more effectively. So you can try to address the situation by pointing to the gaps, okay? And trying to overcome those gaps by getting both sides to communicate a little bit better so they can give you more and you can get what you're looking for. Now, chances are there's people on the team or somewhere else in the company that have worked with this person before. From someone else on the team, someone else inside the company. If that doesn't work, if all else fails, then you really do want to schedule some time and talk with HR or an internal mentor. But in this case, we're probably past the mentor stage. Now you really are working with HR to address that these are some real concerns that you have because you're not able to bridge that gap and it's going to be affecting your performance. What do they recommend? Right? That's one of your last steps that you take before you update your LinkedIn profile. All right. This last bad boss style, this one's really tough. And I've worked with people like this. I've met people like this. They've actually become friends of mine. I've had clients that have had this kind of personality type. They are unapproachable. This is the unapproachable leader. This person, they're going to seem very distant. They might seem extremely confident. They might have a very intimidating outer shell. They put off a vibe that you're just like, you do not want to approach them for whatever reason. And you're definitely not going to go to them for feedback, for guidance. You're not going to be going to them because you want to express concerns. You feel like you're going to get not just get your head chopped off, but they're just not open. They're just not giving you that vibe of, hey, I'm here to help you, right? They might be giving that vibe of they're very selfish. They're there for them and they're climbing the ladder. Now, the negative impacts on the team with a person with this kind of domineering, almost unapproachable style, it's very stressful. And there's a low morale. You're going to feel anxiety. The problem-solving skill set on that team is very poor. And there's very little conflict resolution that's happening. So there's issues on the team and the leader is not there to help fix it. And you're unable to fix some of those conflicts that are happening within the team because the manager is so unapproachable. And because of all these reasons, there's high turnover. That's one of the big fallouts for this type of problem. So if you're thinking this might be the style person you're working for, you're going to notice that there is a closed door policy, right? Limited feedback. When you do get feedback, it's mostly critical. A lot of one-way communication, a lot of just telling you what they want done. They're not looking for your advice. They're not looking for you to feed them information. Definitely a lack of empathy. They don't really seem to care, right? If you're sick, you're not feeling well, they're still pushing for things to get done. Expectations are unclear. And overall, there's a lack of recognition. Someone does something really well, the team might hit a landmark, and there's very little praise for that. And you're going to hear phrases like, I'm too busy. And when you were going into a meeting, let's keep this brief. Or this one is really tough to handle. Look, I don't care how you do it, just get it done. Very self-centered. They're really not interested in you. They just want you to get the task done because they need to get it done. Some of the character traits that you're going to notice with a person like this, they are impatient, they're inflexible, definitely that intimidating exterior, critical, very critical with very little praise. This is an unapproachable person. And this may be one of the most difficult styles to work with. And you're going to try, before you leave, you're going to try. Here are some suggestions for you to improve a work environment with a bad boss like this one. First thing you're going to need to do is adjust your communication style. I can speak from experience. I've worked with some very high achieving people who have this outer shell that's very, very intimidating. But I wanted to work with them. I needed to work with them. So I adjusted my communication style to be very brief, very direct, to the point. And they came to respect that. Get clarification on what's expected. When they put a deadline, when they put a task out, make sure you are clear on exactly what's expected. This may be one of the most important things. Defend your ideas. Do it professionally, but you can't allow yourself to get run over by a person like this. Because when they don't show any empathy, they're just going to push things down on you and they don't care. Be proactive. If you can see something that needs to be done, if you can do it in advance or communicate in advance, you might avoid future conversations or future interaction with this person. You're basically shutting the door for them to come back and communicate with you for some reason because you've already proactively handled the problem. Seek guidance from your teammates. Chances are they've been dealing with this too. Maybe they've discovered a few things that work. If there's no real good solution and this person is not changing, and you're unable to really feel settled in that role, you are going to need to talk to HR, right? And you're going to need to lay out a plan to get more cooperation and more feedback from the manager, because clearly you need it, the team needs it. And at the same time, you can even start working with HR to talk about what's the process for an internal transfer if I can't fix this problem. Because if you do those things, you're going to know when it's time to leave. Well, there you have it. Those are 3 of some of the most challenging bad boss stereotypes to deal with. I think you'll know now how to spot them, what some of the issues are that they're having, and some real practical steps and advice that you can take to make your environment more harmonious. If you're looking for more tips for your career, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll have more content for you shortly.